What would the NBA be without great rivalries? From the early days of the hardwood to the present, the game has only been made more exciting by all-time great players and all-time great teams playing even harder against their heated rivals. Join us as today we will cover the NBA's first great player rivalry, Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain. Both Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain had positive role models in their parents. Bill grew up in rural Louisiana, where his grandfather built the first school for black kids. He then moved to San Francisco as a teenager, where he found the game of basketball. His father and grandfather were both powerful men who taught Bill to never allow a man to disrespect or undermine who he is as another man. Bill was brought up to be humble and hardworking. Wilt's parents, on the other hand, were also hard workers, or as hustlers in Wilt's own words, that would find any way to make some money, which, considering Wilt's large family, came in handy. Wilt learned this trait himself and would become a great card player, businessman, and actor. Growing up in a somewhat affluent part of Philadelphia, Wilt grew up around a lot of Jewish and Italian families in one of the most racially diverse cities in America at the time. These experiences growing up would shape each man for their careers. Both men had successful high school careers in both basketball and track, but none as hyped and as headline-grabbing as Wilt's career at Overbrook High in Philadelphia. Word quickly spread about the 7-foot super athlete that was beating professional players and in exhibition games and charity tournaments throughout the northeastern United States. These were certainly different times. If you watched our video on George Mikan, you'd know that it was very common for top amateur players to compete against professional players in sponsored events for like charities or fundraisers. Wilt was flat out dominating against some of the best the NBA had to offer, and it was certainly turning heads. It wasn't long before some of the best colleges in the country were tripping over themselves to try to lure Wilt to their school. A huge tour of colleges began before Wilt ultimately landed on the University of Kansas. Bill first found success in track, particularly in high jump. Bill's instinct ignored the status quo for centers, and he would use his athleticism as a strength in basketball. Centers were still expected to score a lot of points and not put a lot of focus on defense. Bill Russell would instead utilize his quickness and leaping ability to become a strong presence on defense, with rebounding and shot blocking being his strongest suits. You see, during this time, centers were coached to play with their feet flat on the ground so that they could adjust quickly to opposing players' movements. With Bill's unorthodox game, not a single college offer came his way. However, a University of San Francisco scout had been watching Bill Russell's games and took a notice to his penchant for delivering in the clutch, as well as his high intelligence and instincts for the game of basketball. Russell eagerly accepted a scholarship from the scout and became the starting center his sophomore year for Phil Woolpert's San Francisco Dons. Woolpert and Russell frequently clashed in the beginning, but Woolpert adapted quickly to Russell's strong suits, and the result was Russell's becoming the center of a powerful USF squad. Russell's unique skill set allowed him to be able to sag off other centers. Using his quickness allowed him to play help defense against forwards, challenge their shots, and still get back on top of the opposing center. Just in the case of George Mikan before him, the NCAA had to respond with rule changes to even the playing field. The lane was widened before his junior year, and after he graduated, the NCAA outlawed basket interference. While at USF, Bill Russell was shaped into the man he would mold into for the rest of his life. He was the ultimate team player, but also became hardened on his ideals that he would never be a victim and would always protect his honor as a man. Traveling throughout the United States during the mid-1950s was challenging for Russell and his black teammates. Racist jeers, refused service, and threats were common, particularly in the South. Despite the chatter and the jeers, the Dons won back-to-back NCAA titles with only one loss in 2 years. There were still a lot of doubts as to how Russell's game would translate to the NBA due to his lack of scoring and centers being the primary scorers and professionals at the time. Legendary coach Red Auerbach would take advantage of this skepticism by putting together a deal with the St. Louis Hawks in the 1956 NBA draft. Auerbach would trade Ed Macaulay and future Hall of Famer Cled Hagan for the rights to Russell, who the Hawks picked for the Celtics. This is after Walter Brown dangled the Ice Capades as a bribe for the Rochester Royals to draft a different player instead of Bill, according to Red Auerbach. Auerbach did his homework scouting Bill Russell, thanks to his network of coaching colleagues that tipped him off to Russell's potential to fit what Auerbach was looking for: toughness near the rim and big man rebounding, traits that Russell had in spades. The Celtics immediately won the championship in Bill's rookie year after not being able to get over the hump the previous several years with the Hall of Fame pair of Macaulay and Bob Cousy. They beat the Hawks in 7 games to win the championship, ironically against Macaulay. Although the Hawks won the very next season, the Celtics, spoiler alert, would kick off 8 straight NBA championships. Wilt's career at Kansas was not nearly as productive as Bill's. Wilt picked Kansas to play for legendary coach Phog Allen, but the team forced Allen into retirement right before Wilt's sophomore year, robbing him of the chance to play for him, as freshmen still weren't eligible to play during this time. NCAA officials were also constantly investigating Wilt for alleged kickbacks and perks from boosters. Despite this, Kansas had a great year his sophomore year and advanced to the NCAA championship to play against undefeated University of North Carolina. The 1957 NCAA championship was a very pivotal moment in Wilt's life. Kansas versus North Carolina went to triple overtime, with the Tar Heels using ball freezing tactics, as there was no shot clock in college during that time. After a crushing 1-point loss despite Wilt's 23 points and 14 rebounds, the media was off to the races, starting the Wilt's a loser narrative that would follow him for the rest of his life. During his junior year, a urinary infection of all things caused Wilt to miss some games, and Kansas lost too many games in his absence to qualify for any tournament. With Wilt's continued aggravation with NCAA officials peering into his personal life, the crushing tournament loss, and a lack of income from playing college ball, he decided he was done playing college basketball. He sold his story, "Why I'm Leaving College," to a local paper for more money than most NBA players made during that time, and he joined the Harlem Globetrotters for $50,000, definitely more than any NBA player was making. While with the Globetrotters, Wilt enjoyed his time, especially the European women on the tours throughout his time overseas. Globetrotters owner Abe Saperstein and Philadelphia Warriors Edward Gottlieb had an agreement that after 1 year, Wilt would join the Warriors, since Wilt couldn't play pro ball until his graduating class finished. Because Wilt was originally from the Philadelphia area, he would be a territorial selection in the '59 draft for the Philadelphia Warriors. By the time Wilt made his NBA debut for the '59-60 season, Bill Russell had already played 3 years, appearing in all 3 NBA Finals, winning 2 rings along with 3 rebounding titles and an MVP. It was going to take some catching up for Wilt. Bill's fit on the Celtics worked so well for a variety of reasons. Auerbach knew how to build great teams, and it started with knowing what each of his players brought to the table and how to get the most of them. The Celtics had a lot of great scoring already, but lacked stout defense, particularly around the rim. Not only did Bill fulfill this need, but he brought excellent help defense, rebounding, and was a very underrated passer. He knew how to set up his teammates for their best shot. With Hall of Famers known for their scoring like Bob Cousy, Tom Heinsohn, Sam Jones, and John Havlicek, Bill had plenty of outlet scorers to spread the ball around if he was quickly surrounded by defenders, but the strength of the Celtics was their ability to get out and run in transition. In fact, a lot of modern plays based on change of possessions were based on what the Celtics were doing. Despite how coordinated and well-conditioned the Celtics were, they actually ran very few plays. They always played to their strengths and played tough defense on their opponents for 48 minutes a game. Completely unselfish basketball played on strengths alone. Wilt was already a celebrity by the time he entered the NBA for the 1959-1960 season. Unlike Bill, who came in with almost zero expectations, the same could not be said at all for Wilt. The hype was so overwhelming that it was considered a foregone conclusion that Wilt would be the best player in the NBA, and that the Philadelphia Warriors, who already had a pair of All-Stars and Paul Arizin and Tom Gola, would immediately contend with the Celtics for the best team in basketball. The pundits weren't completely off, as Wilt immediately torched the NBA, setting NBA records for points per game and rebounds per game with 37.6 and 27 respectively. Numbers no one but himself ever touched, becoming the first rookie MVP in the process. The Warriors won 49 games, best in the NBA if it weren't for their division rival Celtics, who won 59 games. This would be a bit of a theme for Wilt in his career. Great individual season, even decent team success. But the Celtics as a unit were legendary. In the 1960 Eastern Division Finals, the Celtics beat Chamberlain and the Warriors in 6 games, with Wilt outdueling Russell in points and rebounds, but the Celtics did better overall passing the ball around and making plays away from Bill when needed. As I said before, a big part of Wilt's career was coming up just short, and a big part of that has to fall on coaching. Wilt had great teammates throughout his career, make no mistake about that. But the coaching, on the other hand, was uneven at best. Neil Johnston, Wilt's first coach in the NBA, expected Wilt to fall in line with his philosophy and would sometimes throw Wilt under the bus when the team lost. After Wilt's second season with the Warriors, Neil Johnston was out, and in his place was legendary Carolina's collegiate coach Frank McGuire for one season. But what a season it was. Wilt's best individual season ever, somehow averaging over 48 minutes a game, scoring the 100 points against the New York Knicks, and him torching the entire NBA with a 50 points per game average, which no one, of course, would ever touch. All of that took place during the season. With Hall of Fame teammates Paul Arizin, Tom Gola, and Guy Rodgers, this was probably the best chance the Warriors had to beat the Celtics. Instead, it was another crushing Game 7 loss, this time by 2 points. With Wilt double and even triple teamed at points during this game, his co-star and running mate Paul Arizin went out an ice-cold 4 of 22 from the field in what would be his last NBA game. What a way to go out, huh? Wilt not only lost the NBA championship to Bill, but the NBA MVP as well. Can you imagine a guy scoring 50 a game not winning the MVP? On top of losing Arizin, McGuire would not make the move to San Francisco with the team, so in came Bob Feerick. Like Neil Johnston before him, another former great player turned coach. By the time Feerick came to town to coach the Warriors for the 1962-63 NBA year, Bill Russell and the Celtics had already won 5 of 6 NBA championships, losing only the aforementioned 58 championship to the St. Louis Hawks. To say Bill was in a better environment would be a huge understatement. While Wilt continued to torch the NBA with his 45 points, 24 rebounds a game, Bill won his 4th MVP, his 3rd in a row and 4th in 5 years, and his 6th ring. At this point in their careers, Bill had 6 rings, 4 MVPs, and 2 rebounding titles, but both before Wilt joined the NBA. Wilt at this time had 0 rings, his 1 MVP from his rookie year, but 4 rebounding titles and 4 scoring titles in all 4 years so far. Perhaps even more stinging for Wilt, however, was his playoff resume to that point. Eliminated twice by the Celtics and swept right off the bat in 1961. Rock bottom was the 63 season when the Warriors struggled without Arizin and a major injury to Tom Gola and won only 31 games total to miss the playoffs completely. For the 63-64 season, Warriors ownership went and got coach Alex Hannum, who had success coaching the Syracuse Nationals as well as the St. Louis Hawks, of which Hannum was a coach of the only team that denied an NBA championship to Bill Russell and the Celtics at that point, the 58 Hawks team. With this move, Feerick moved to the front office. Despite the coaching change, the Warriors once again fell short in the 64 NBA Finals to the Russell-led Celtics once again, this time in 5 games. Midway through the 64-65 season, with the Warriors having an awful season, Chamberlain was traded to the Philadelphia Sixers. His relationship with Warrior ownership as well as with his teammates and coach Hannum had deteriorated. With the Sixers, his coaching situation wasn't eased much by Dolph Schayes, yet another former player whom Wilt had issues with. Schayes would coddle Wilt, changing practice times to fit Wilt's personal schedule and would lie to the media in favor of Wilt. Schayes, however, wouldn't be above bashing Wilt when the team fell short. After 2 more heartbreaking playoff series losses to Russell and the Celtics, Schayes was fired and in came a familiar face. The 66-67 season was a turning point for the rivalry of Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and their teams. Both teams had new coaches. Shocking coaches, I may say. The Warriors made the decision to hire Alex Hannum, who infamously coached Wilt with the Warriors before Wilt was traded. The Celtics, on the other hand, well, I guess you could say Red Auerbach was fed up with winning so much and felt it was time to let the coaching go and focus on building the team. Red retired as Celtics coach, winning 9 out of 10 seasons as coach, including 8 straight NBA championships. The Celtics were the greatest dynasty in American sports with Red Auerbach as the coach and Russell as the anchor. So who could fill those enormous shoes? Who could possibly follow that incredible resume? How about Bill Russell? On April 16, 1966, Russell became the first African-American head coach in American sports, but he also wasn't done playing. As player-coach, Russell vowed to cut all personal ties with his fellow teammates to become their coach, and he seamlessly made that transition. The man who was known for throwing up before every game now had to be the coach and prepare his team throughout the season. Auerbach moved to the front office, where he would remain until his death in 2006. Orchestrating personnel moves that would result in 7 more NBA championships. Russell wasn't Auerbach's first or even third choice, but he was the right guy for the job. The Celtics won an incredible 60 games in Russell's first season as coach, but the Philadelphia 76ers led the NBA with a new record, 68 wins. You would think the Hannum-Chamberlain reunion would have been a disaster, but you'd be wrong. For the first time in Wilt's career, a coach earned his respect and vice versa. Hannum would stand up to Wilt, having heated arguments in which the two men needed to be separated. Chamberlain began showing up to practice on time and was fully engaged in helping the team win. Wilt had already flashed his underrated passing the previous season when he finished 7th in assists, but back with Hannum and with the new age, fast-breaking athletic basketball being played, Wilt's talents flourished even more, and so began his first breakthrough in his career as he began to evolve. The Sixers offense ran through the 7'1" Wilt Chamberlain, but they were perhaps most dangerous in transition. With players like Chet Walker, Hal Greer, and Billy Cunningham, the fast-moving Sixers could move down the court with ease and grace and score easy baskets. Wilt's focused on getting his teammates involved more and more, and as a result, his scoring fell a bit to 24 points, which was still good for 5th in the NBA, but it was his lowest average in points so far in his career. But he was also 3rd in assists while leading the league in rebounding. Perhaps most impressive this season was him setting a new record in NBA field goal percentage with 68% of his baskets going down. In my opinion, this was the single greatest season of Wilt's career and a sterling example of how a great player can become even greater when they work on their game and make sacrifices for the betterment of their team. The 1967 NBA playoffs saw the great rivalry of Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell meet a dramatic fever pitch when the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia Sixers played a series to decide who plays in the NBA Finals. This was felt by many sports writers at the time to be the true NBA Finals, but since the teams were in the same division, it had to happen here. The new Wilt was out to prove he was not a loser, and in the 5-game series that wasn't even really close, Wilt outdueled his old rival, averaging a triple-double in the series with 21.6 points, 32 rebounds, and 10 assists, to Bill's averages of 11 points, 23 rebounds, and 6 assists. And for the first time in a playoff series, Wilt did not lead his team in scoring, as teammate Hal Greer's 29 points led the Sixers, one of 4 Sixers that scored at least 19 points in the series that finally dethroned the Russell-led Celtics. Another spoiler alert, this would be the last time Bill would be denied in his career. In the 1967 NBA Finals, Wilt finally shed the tag of being called a selfish player, all about his own stats, when the Sixers beat his old team, the San Francisco Warriors, in 6 games. Now, why do I say he finally shed the selfish tag? Well, it was the way the Sixers won. With the offense going through Wilt, he led both teams in total rebounds and assists, as 4 of Wilt's teammates, Hal Greer, Chet Walker, Wally Jones, and Billy Cunningham, all averaged more than 20 points a game, with Wilt filling the stat sheet with 17.7 points, 29 rebounds, and 7 assists. Warriors' Rick Barry averaged 41 points, and a future Hall of Fame center and a player Wilt had a tremendous amount of respect for, Nate Thurman, kept good pace with Wilt with 14 points and 27 rebounds, but it just wasn't enough for the complete all-around team that was the 1967 Philadelphia 76ers. Despite the season ending without an NBA championship for just the 2nd time in his career, Bill Russell and the Celtics were beginning to be second-guessed by the sports media. Had Wilt really learned how to win better than Bill, who had only known how to win since he decided to pick up playing basketball? Those questions were going to be answered in a deciding 7-game series in the 1968 NBA playoffs. Once again, Wilt had the better overall stat line to Russell, but it was Bill's adjustments as a coach that proved to be the difference in the series. With John Havlicek leading the offense over the perpetually reliable and clutch Sam Jones, the Celtics flourished on offense but also frustrated and pestered Wilt, putting him on the line in crucial must-make situations. Wilt Chamberlain had worked his entire career to shed the loser attribute from his resume, but after building a 3-1 lead in the series, the Celtics roared back and won in 7 games. The Celtics went on to beat the Lakers, led by Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, in 6 games to win Russell's first NBA championship as coach, and thus, the first black man to win a championship as coach in sports was achieved. One thing I haven't yet covered in this video is just how heavy the impact of the Celtics winning all the time was for other players and teams in the NBA that weren't named Wilt Chamberlain. As heartbreaking as it can be to come so close as Wilt had, there was someone out there who had gotten their hearts ripped out even worse than Wilt. Well, 2 people. Elgin Baylor and Jerry West had felt the sting of losing to the Boston Celtics over and over again. Baylor in particular probably felt he was going to win many rings in his career when he took the Minneapolis Lakers to the NBA Finals with a 33-39 record back in 1959, only to get swept by the Celtics, and then watch 6 more times as time and time again the Celtics beat his Lakers, celebrating championships one after another. Well, business felt like it was finally picking up when Wilt Chamberlain was traded to the Lakers for the 68-69 NBA season. Bill Russell was greatly affected by the assassination of JFK and the Vietnam War and was becoming increasingly disinterested in playing basketball. He didn't show up to any coaches' meetings, was overweight, and had to go to the doctor to be told he was overworking himself. This seemed to light a fire under him, and he suddenly refocused on basketball, but the Celtics won only 48 games, the fewest they had won in over a decade. Meanwhile, the Lakers with Wilt, Wes, and Baylor finished with 55 wins. The two great centers were once again in different conferences, and both teams made relatively short work of their opponents to once again meet up in the playoffs. Lakers Celtics, Wilt Bill. Teams chock full of Hall of Famers for one last hurrah. Before the series began, no one knew Bill Russell would suddenly retire, not even his friend and former coach and now executive of the team, Red Auerbach. This series would have certainly had a lot more hype and importance behind it if anyone did know. The 1969 NBA Finals had more immense talent than any finals before it, and quite possibly for a long time after it. The Celtics had John Havlicek, who had led the Celtics in scoring with 28 points and 11 rebounds, ageless Sam Jones with 19 points, Bill with 21 rebounds along with 9 points and 5 assists of his own, as well as Hall of Fame teammates Don Nelson, Bailey Howell, and Tom Sanders. The Lakers had Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, and Wilt Chamberlain, who were each considered to be the best at their position. The Lakers jumped out to a 2-0 series lead, but the series was quickly tied up when it went back to Boston. Both teams once again traded wins at home to set up the all-important Game 7 in Inglewood, California. The Celtics built a huge lead, but the Lakers went on a big run late in the fourth quarter. However, Wilt twisted his knee on a rebound and was subbed out. Despite coming as close as down 1, the Lakers made a couple of bad plays and turned the ball over. The Lakers lost by 2 points with Wilt Chamberlain on the bench. Wilt's reputation took a bigger hit as a lot of pundits believed he quit on his team, including his friend and rival Bill Russell, who flat out accused Wilt of throwing the game, incredulously asking why he wouldn't come back in the game. This would end their friendship for a few decades, unfortunately. Bill abruptly retired after the game, and Wilt's career would continue on for another few years. Wilt would get hurt and miss most of the following season with injury, which saw the New York Knicks win their first NBA championship by beating Wilt and the Lakers in 7 games. Willis Reed, Walt Frazier, and Dave DeBusschere proved to be too much for the aging Baylor, West, and Chamberlain, and with Baylor hobbling up and down the court throughout the series, it wouldn't look good for the Lakers come Game 7. Walt Frazier had a Game 7 for the ages with 36 points and 19 assists, with the inspiration coming from the injured Willis Reed. This would be Elgin Baylor's last postseason appearance, as he spent the next 2 years trying to rehab from multiple injuries and unfortunately retired without a ring. With the additions of Gail Goodrich and Jim McMillan to the Lakers, Wilt did win his second ring in the 1972 NBA Finals in 5 games against the New York Knicks. Wilt's last season was the 1972-73 season, as he decided to sit out his last contract year in order to coach in the ABA, which was not a success and only lasted the 1 season. Bill would go on to later coach the Sacramento Kings briefly and the Seattle Supersonics for a few years. He would end up settling in the Seattle area for the rest of his life. In the 1990s, Wilt and Bill reconciled and did TV appearances about their time on the court and how much basketball had changed. All in all, their resumes stack up a little bit like this. Bill gets the advantage by being up 1 in the MVP category, with the highlight perhaps being that legendary 3-man race between Bill, Wilt, and Oscar Robertson in 1962, which we talked about in this video. 11 rings to 2 is also a pretty hefty difference as well. Wilt has 1 more All-Star Game appearance, but Bill has made 1 more All-NBA team. They didn't have defensive teams until later in Bill's career, but Will did get named to 2 defensive teams, which is notable since he wasn't considered a defensive stalwart for much of his career. Will gets style and innovation points to me for leading the league in assists as a center, as well as winning MVP his rookie year. Winning 3 MVPs in a row is an incredible feat both of them share. Bill's Celtics beat Wilt's team 7 times to 1. Both are obviously incredible players. If you were able to build a team around one of these 2 great players as rookies, who would you prefer? Let us know in the comments. This is one I've been working on for quite some time, and I needed to cut it down in order to avoid it being too long, but as you can see, that was a losing battle. Thank you for hanging in there to the end. If you enjoyed this video, look out for more in our series in NBA Rivals. Please remember to like the video and subscribe if you did enjoy it.